This week on Straight Talk.
And it's everywhere. It's everybody we contact.
Be very cautious, be very careful.
Battling the fentanyl epidemic.
It wasn't clear the level of the danger and how prevalent they are.
Because a few grains can have fatal consequences.
He was just doing normal experimentation like any other kid. He was just like a regular teenager.
Last year, the synthetic opioid, up to 100 times more powerful than morphine,
We're seeing people OD on half a pill.
killed a dozen kids in Oregon.
Right away, they found those blue pills.
This year, it's changing shapes
The little white Xanax bars.
and colors.
It could look like sidewalk chalk. It could look like a pixie stick.
Cheaper to produce
They sell for as little as $3 a pill.
and easier to transport.
I mean, this is pretty typical for how it's all shipped up.
This guy's not going to stop.
With record seizures
How many pills in here?
Probably hundreds of thousands.
Probably hundreds of thousands.
new public warnings,
What they're taking has the high potential to kill them.
and our teenagers,
We're going to take the pills from you. We will not be asking any questions.
including 16-year-old Griffin Hoffman, who was poisoned in March by a counterfeit prescription pill,
He must have taken something and not known.
an easy target.
The fact that it happened to my kid is evidence that it could happen to anybody's kid.
Welcome to a special edition of Straight Talk. I'm David Molko in for Laurel Porter. Over the next half hour, we'll be having a conversation we hope you will share with your family, your friends, and your loved ones about the explosive growth of fentanyl in our region, the evolving risks, and as you just saw, very real consequences, especially for young people. So let's welcome our guests here. Carrie Cohen is Griffin Hoffman's mother. Griffin, the tennis star and sophomore at Northeast Portland's McDaniel High, who died earlier this year. Dr. Anna Hildy is a child and adolescent psychiatrist who specializes in working with youth struggling with addiction and mental wellness. She is also the medical director for Haven Counseling Collective. Next to Dr. Hildy, Scott Caron, an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Oregon. He is currently prosecuting some of the highest profile drug cases involving fentanyl in our region, including, we should point out, the alleged drug trafficker charged in connection with Griffin Hoffman's death. And on the end, Cam Strom, currently with the Oregon-Idaho High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. He recently retired after 3 decades at the Drug Enforcement Agency, most recently as Assistant Special Agent in charge for the DEA in Oregon. I should add here as well that you are all parents as well. So Cam, Scott, Anna, Carrie, welcome to Straight Talk. Carrie, I want to begin with you because we've talked a lot over the last 6 months, and I just want to again, respectfully acknowledge the profound loss you and your family have suffered this year. We are all grateful to have you here with us today. I just want to start off by asking, why was it important for you to be here?
Well, it remains important to me to keep my son alive this way, to keep his story alive. I know that his story can help others or create more awareness among others, but mostly for me, it's really about keeping him alive.
Anna, I want to bring you into the conversation now. At the center of this are families like Carrie's, right? But we got to touch on the big picture here, and we talk statistics, but it's important to keep in mind these are people at the center of all these numbers. So, but if we look at the epidemic, the flood of fentanyl, the emergency, and I've heard all of these different words. Between 2019 and 2021, fentanyl deaths in Oregon increased by 617%. If we look at young people, it was 0 in 2019, 5 in 2020, at least 12 in 2021, at least. What do these numbers say to you?
I mean, they tell me that there is an urgent need to reach out to our youth and our community and educate. We need to educate people because this will continue. It will continue to get worse and worse unless we, as a community, do something different.
Part of the conversation, part of the reason we're having here. Cam, if we look at the DEA seizures, given your 30 years of experience with that organization, but 2019 to 2021, fentanyl seizures in Oregon increased by 1,891%. In the first 3 months of this year, the DEA seized half of what it did last year. Waiting for updated numbers here. Is this because of more enforcement, more awareness, or is there just that much more coming?
It's a combination of both of those things. There's a tremendous amount of effort being put into enforcement, and there seems to be a nearly unlimited supply that's coming up into our region.
And Scott, from your perspective, why the surge? What's driving it?
Well, David, thanks for having me here to address this. I think what the surge is coming from is on two sides. One is there's an incredible supply that's being produced, and that's largely cartels out of Mexico that are producing just mass amounts of these fake counterfeit pills that are laced with fentanyl. And so there's a huge supply of them out there. And that's in turn, they're creating a demand, and that demand is being created here in the United States where people are now seeking them.
Carrie, I want to kind of bring it back to Griffin here. Your son was 16 years old. You told me he was like any other kid, playing video games, going to the movies, you know, hanging out with his friends. I mean, in a lot of ways, right? You were even aware of some of these challenges, of some of his needs, of the things he was experimenting with. Can you tell me a little bit about the types of conversations that you had with your son?
Well, I started having conversations with him from when he was young, I mean, even pre-teen years. We always had a very, same with his dad, we always had a very open conversation about it. I always had told him that he wouldn't be in trouble. I just wanted to have open discussions constantly. And you know, the thing about this one, so he had been experimenting with some stuff. I knew that, and he was open about it with us. He thought, you know, he was getting an oxy, which, you know, he might have like vomited all night and woken up the next day. So he didn't know he was getting poison because this wasn't as hugely a part of our dialogue yet. So yeah, lots of conversation. I mean, at this point, I had said to him, you know, don't ever take anything you don't know what it is. But he thought he knew what that was. And
at that point in the months before his death, this wasn't on your radar. Fentanyl was not on your radar, at least not in the fact that it could be in a counterfeit prescription pill that looked like the real deal.
Right, yeah. Of course I knew about fentanyl. I knew that it was out there. But, you know, unfortunately, since his death, unfortunately for me, it's just now everyone is talking about it. Everyone knows. And I didn't know what was happening on social media at that point at all with the kids.
In terms of how it was getting to them,
yeah.
and we'll get into that in a moment with you two here. But Cam, one of the challenges here is we talk about the blue counterfeit M30 pills, like the ones Griffin took or the one Griffin took, but it keeps changing form. I mean, every week it seems like we've got a new release or warning from the county or the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DEA's office, saying, watch out for these rainbow colored pills. We're calling them Skittles. Or watch out for this powder that looks like sidewalk chalk or a pixie stick that a kid might think is candy. I mean, what have you seen? What is your guidance for parents here that are just trying to keep up with this?
The guidance is the same. You've got to talk to your kids. You've got to educate. You've got to really share that if it doesn't come from your doctor, if it doesn't come from a pharmacist, you've got to assume it's got fentanyl in it. That's unfortunate to say, but 4 out of 10 pills have a lethal dose, and we're seeing fentanyl in all shapes and sizes and all different kinds of pill configurations. You have to make that assumption.
And I think one of the things I found surprising too is that it's not, because of the way it's manufactured and made, it's not necessarily you have to take the whole pill to get a lethal dose. It's irregular. You could cut it up into 10 pieces, and each of those could be a fatal dose, or none of them could be a fatal dose. You just don't know, and that's what's so scary here.
Absolutely. And the mantra that DEA had started with, which is one pill can kill, 40% of the pills that are tested come back with a lethal dose.
Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just want to add, because I think that's really correct, that every parent needs to be talking to their kids about this, and that I think for a while, at least, people are, you know, thinking opiates, right? Oxys, Percocets. This is not any, like you're saying, any pill that isn't from the pharmacy likely has fentanyl in it. That's, you know, MDMA, ecstasy, Xanax. I mean, these are, you know, Xanny, right? Whatever it is that people are getting to use, it likely has fentanyl in it.
And if they're white one day, they could be yellow tomorrow.
Yes.
They could be blue. They could be rainbow. They probably changed again by the time we finish this
Yes.
conversation here, right? Because before we get into kind of the conversations and how to do that and what to do and what not to do, because this is something you're in your expertise here, Scott. I just want to kind of get a better sense, because Carrie touched on it here with social media, and Cam, feel free to chime in as well, how it is getting into young hands, the sort of distribution when we talk about teenagers getting, you know, their hands on counterfeit pills that turn out to be deadly.
Sure. What we're seeing a lot is it's off of social media. I mean, any kid that has a Snapchat account also has a drug dealer on the end of that line. It doesn't mean that they're there. Snapchat has lots of very valid reasons or valid purposes. But through social media, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Facebook Messenger, any of these other apps that are out there, drug dealers are both looking for victims out there. They're looking for people to sell to. They're seeking them out. And kids are also going online, whether it's to experiment or not. They can reach these people on social media, and those dealers will deliver it to them. So it's making it very, very easy.
What kind of conversations are happening on those apps in terms of what kids are asking for, or what's happening for parents, I mean, to kind of look out for, if that's even possible here?
See, a lot of it is, I mean, it's looking for blues. I mean, blues is the phrase that we hear all the time. And as Dr. Hildy mentioned, I mean, it's not just the fake M30s that are out there, but I've seen fake Xanax that are out there, fake Vicodin that are out there, fake Percocets that are out there. It's just these blue M30 counterfeit oxycodone pills are what we're seeing a lot of. That's just flooded the market. And so it can simply be a matter of, hey, I've got some blues, or I've got some buttons. Anyone want some? And people are like, sure, I'll try it. And they will deliver them to them. And sometimes, I mean, at the level that it's getting to our kids, it's getting to them in small amounts, 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 pills. I mean, it's very, very small amounts. And these dealers will deliver that. So before, we used to have people who would do deals out on the street. They will come and they will deliver it to your residence.
I just want to mention here, Portland police alone this year, just because we talk about the flood, which you just mentioned, they have seized more suspected fentanyl pills this year than they did in all of 2021 already, and we're, halfway through September. They have also already seized 10 times the amount of fentanyl powder this year as they did last year. Anna, let's talk about families and the conversation you're going to have, and parents who come to you and are worried and say, I'm not sure what my teen is doing, or I know they're experimenting with counterfeit prescription pills or prescription pills, period. Where do you even start that conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I love hearing, Carrie, what you shared, because I think the most important part is to be having these open conversations. I think to be inquisitive, curious, like what, you know, the way that I approach is it, you know, teenagers are developmentally, they are supposed to be experimenting. They're supposed to be much more focused on their peers. You know, family isn't as important, and so they can tend to be a little right? We think about them as being rebellious, or, you know, like not listening. So I think when you have a more dogmatic approach, like, don't ever do this, you shouldn't be doing this, that's not good, that's generally not very helpful. What I find is that usually, you know, youth will just kind of dig in and be like, well, I'm gonna go do it anyway. And so I think having that, like, I think just saying I think every parent should be sitting down and being like, hey, I heard about fentanyl, I heard about these pills, let's talk about it. Have you ever seen this? Any of your friends doing this? This is what I know about it. What do you know about it? Let's come together, right? Let's share our knowledge. And so I think at least bringing it up and beginning to have that conversation.
And what I'm hearing from you is it's more of a kind of part curiosity, compassion, and not so much this fear and anger. I mean, but it's so natural to want to react in that way. So how do you talk to parents and say, you got to get away from this knee-jerk, like being afraid or being angry or being upset?
It is really hard. I mean, I have a daughter, and she, like, I'm not, like, you know, I can put the psychiatrist hat on and be like, oh, you know, I have this harm reduction approach, but it is hard. But I think really the way that I look at this, and we were talking about it earlier, right, is I think young people, they can make really good decisions, but they have to have the knowledge and information in order to do that. And that's our job, right? That's what we're supposed to be doing as parents. We're teaching them so that they can become independent and they can make these really good decisions. And so where I say, trust yourself as a parent, and then give them the information, knowing that you have to allow them to step out and live their lives.
I mean, Carrie, from your own experience, did you find that there were conversations you had with Griffin that worked and did not work in terms of the reaction? I mean, you have a counseling background as well, so some of this was, you know, sort of your bread and butter, so to speak, when you talk to clients about different issues. I mean, this is very different because it's very personal, but what do you remember about those conversations?
Well, again, my whole approach was, and his father's, was that he was going to experiment, that was to be expected, and that what mattered to me most was open discussion, and that he was never going to get in trouble. And so we talked at length about all sorts of things. He wanted to hear about, like, my drug experiences growing up. He wanted to hear, like, you know, about all that stuff.
And were you pretty open with him about all that?
Totally. I did so many, I mean, had fentanyl been around in the ways that it is now, I wouldn't be here. There's no way.
Well, let me ask you too, Cam, you know, as a father as well, how did you first broach fentanyl with your teens? I mean, you saw this in your work all the time, so how did you go home and have this conversation? What did you do?
That's interesting. The conversation came about because I got issued Narcan, and it was an aha moment for me. We teach our kids CPR, we teach our kids how to call 911 when they're young. We teach them all kinds of things. I was driving home with a Narcan kit, and it was my epiphany to talk to my kids, and it opened up a great conversation. And I use the analogy, I don't know that it's still true today, it is because I'm retired, but I'm more likely to use Narcan on a Friday night at a football game than I am for work. That was the conversation. That was the, hey, experimentation, I understand, you're gonna go out and do a whole bunch of different things and try different things and develop your own lifestyle and everything else. Here's an opportunity where you don't get a second chance.
Scott, what about you? What were your kids?
Fatal drug overdose. That's what prompted the conversation. So I have two daughters. One's a junior in college, Hannah, and a junior, and then Viviana, a junior at Central Catholic. Love those kids to death. And what started it was back in 2015, I was helping on a case where there was a drug overdose from fentanyl that happened in North Dakota. And the source of supply was here in Portland, and that's what prompted it. So we ended up working with law enforcement in North Dakota, Portland Police here, as well as the HIT team here and Homeland Security, and ended up doing a warrant in the wee hours of January 22nd of 2015. And I remember right after that was done, going and talking to my girls about it, saying, this is what I had to deal with, or this is what we were working on. And it was because someone, at that time, they had ordered it over the internet, and it was just sent through the mail, and they tried it, and they died. And that was the conversation, was this stuff's out there, and it can kill you.
What kind of response did you guys get from your teenagers when you had these conversations?
Kind of like probably a lot of us have. It's that you talk to them, and at first, I mean, they hear you, and they say, yes, Dad, and all that. But I think it sort of takes a little bit. And so I think I think they were shocked by someone that wasn't much older than them had taken something and had died from it. But it's still at the same time, it's sort of that, well, it's someone else. But as there's been more and more of these that have happened, especially with high school kids, it's just a reoccurring conversation. And every time I have to have one of these cases, or every time we respond and prosecute one of these cases, especially where there's a fatal, even a non-fatal overdose, every time I'm talking to my girls about it, about, hey, this is what Dad just had to work with today. You have to know. And I think that's it. It's a reoccurring conversation.
Cam, what kind of response did you get?
Similar. I turn the volume up when I tell them the second time, and turn the volume up when you tell them the third time. And then you forward articles. DEA seizes 100,000 pills in Southern Oregon on the way to Portland, and you forward them the articles. Hey, it looks like anything you think it could look like.
Yeah.
And again, going back to what I said earlier, if it doesn't come from a doctor, it doesn't come from a pharmacist, got to assume it has fentanyl in it.
I think this is an ongoing conversation. It's not a conversation that you're going to have one time right? You're going to keep on repeating it. And I think the other thing that's important to remember is, right, youth, and we've seen it in studies that there's this tendency to think that nothing bad is going to happen to me. Like, I'm not going to be that one. And so I think having that bit of information is important. And I think, you know, the way that I talk about it with a lot of the young people is it really is Russian roulette. And that and part of it, and you guys can probably speak to that too, right? These pills are not standardized. They're not coming out with, you know, so one can have a little bit of something and another can have lethal doses. And so, you know, sometimes there might be, right, well, I tried that and it was fine. I was fine that one time.
Right.
But you may not be fine the next time.
I guess one difference too, you know, Cam, to your point, is Russian roulette, where maybe almost every chamber in the gun is filled with something, right?
Yeah.
Not 1 in 10.
Yep.
4 out of 10 maybe, and who knows as we keep going, depending on the form. But for parents, where do they turn when they need that support?
So I think you know, initially I would say reaching out to like a pediatrician or primary care doctor, I think is a great, you know, like but I also think that like as a parent to reach out to, you know, even mental health therapists or addiction counselors, because there may be ways of getting, you know, additional help and discussions around how do you even talk to your child about some of these things.
And does that support exist? I mean, on the level that we need it in our community? And I know we're looking at a bigger level, but specifically when it comes to youth and teenagers.
No.
Why not?
So we are failing. I can't say this enough. The state of Oregon is failing our youth. And I think that, so they're just, our children's mental health system is stretched to the limit. It was even before COVID, and then it became even harder. Trying to get any youth in to see any kind of provider is challenging in the mental health realm.
When we talk about harm reduction, and frankly, maybe a lot of families out here might find this unpalatable, does it go to the point where you should be providing Narcan to your teens? And if you do that, how old? And then do you say, if you're actually going to do this, then should you do it together? Or is that just, you know, I guess, making it more likely that they will? I mean, it's a slippery slope. The right solution's probably not the right for every family, but what are your thoughts on this, you know?
I mean, I think every family should have Narcan everywhere. I mean, my 9-year-old should probably have some. I mean,
and know how to use it or how to administer it. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Still ahead, fighting the flood.
It's planes, trains, automobiles. It's backpacks. It's mail.
How do you try to stop it? Where do you even begin?
That's up next on a special edition of Straight Talk.
Every avenue you can think of is how fentanyl's getting here.
Including surging up the I-5 corridor.
And it is cheap and it is easy to manufacture.
Guns, vehicles, cash, and lots of little pills. A record haul this year filled with at least 150,000 potentially deadly doses.
It's fentanyl possession and stolen handguns, and this is almost everything we do right now.
Comes a hidden compartment where a lot of dealers will keep their drugs inside.
With a relentless flow that feels like a raging river.
Which is a better business model for the cartel.
Well, let's talk about what it takes to make a dent in this flood of fentanyl. It's coming from the cartels in Mexico. Cam, you said it's sort of getting in every way it can. How do you try to stop it? Where do you even begin?
Start with your partners, local, state, federal, tribal, and you combine resources. You share investigative techniques, you share resources, you gather evidence, you identify the targets, and you present the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for our prosecutorial partner to bring those organizations to justice for the damage they're doing in our community.
Can you try and give me a sense, without giving away too much tradecraft here, how fentanyl is coming in, how it's being transported, if you're seeing an evolution of how this is looking right now?
Yeah, it's just a similar question to the one I've had. 5 years ago it was heroin, 7 years ago it was methamphetamine. Yeah. It's planes, trains, automobiles. It's backpacks. It's mail. It's tractor trailers. It's, you name it, somebody's trying it and somebody's being successful in getting this poison from Mexico into the communities in Oregon and Idaho.
Where are we kind of on the spectrum of, I mean, the exponential rise in seizures, also deaths, young people dying from this? Where are we kind of, in your view, in this fentanyl fight?
I'm optimistic. I think we're getting the education, we're getting the conversations out there. I don't think there's going to be a slowdown until demand starts to recede a little bit, but there's certainly a lot of efforts going on a daily basis. Win, lose, I don't know, but it's not from a lack of effort. It's not from a lack of working together, trying to have the most impact we can have in our community.
And Scott, on that note, I want to bring you in here. I mean, executing a search warrant, getting hundreds of thousands of pills off the streets has happened multiple times this year in Oregon. Doing that and building a criminal case, they're kind of two different things here. In the case of Carrie's son here, it's a man in his 20s, the suspect charged with Griffin's death, Manuel Antonio Souza Espinoza, the third-level alleged drug dealer. According to court records, he was present at a home in Gresham last year, months before Griffin's death. Law enforcement went in. They found 12,000 pills, 9 firearms, body armor, a ballistic helmet, $35,000 in cash. It doesn't look like he was charged at the time. I know you can't talk about specifics of cases, but help me understand why going in like that and seizing pills, and there are multiple people there and there's firearms, why it's not that simple when it comes to building a criminal case.
Sure, criminal cases are hard because the standard is you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And whenever you go into a house, if you've got multiple people there, you also have to be able to apportion responsibility. That thing that happened back in November wasn't my case, so I can't answer it. I can't talk about the specifics. When Mr. Espinoza came into my lap, it was a very focused investigation. That's the one that he's been charged on right now. And while I can't go into specifics, when he was alleged to have sold or showed up at a deal with the pills, and that was what he was arrested for, and then when the grand jury returned the indictment that involved Griffin as the victim, that I can talk about. I mean, it's hard putting these cases together. As we sometimes talk about them, they're like homicide investigations. They're difficult in terms of not only proving who's responsible for it, but also proving a proof of causation. That but for the distribution of that fentanyl, death would not have resulted. And so that's the standard that we have to prove, is but for causation. And that's difficult.
And you know, one of the things we should mention too is Espinoza's pleaded not guilty. We've reached out to his lawyer a couple times. We've not gotten a response from him. Your office, though, Scott, also recently announced charges against another drug dealer, this dealing with the death of a 17-year-old, another Portland teenager back in June from fentanyl. Are you finding there are common links in these cases, things that you see in common, the traffickers, dealers have in common? What are sort of the repeating patterns, if you will, here?
Well, the repeating patterns that you've mentioned in these cases are young victims who are buying what they believe are they're these M30 pills that turn out to be counterfeit, and they're laced with fentanyl. The victims are buying them not knowing what they're necessarily getting, and certainly not knowing that they're getting a fatal amount. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of advertising on social media. That's also been a common denominator in a lot of these cases. And that the initial deals to the victims that have passed away from these overdoses, they're not buying in bulk. They're buying a small number of pills that they're buying for their personal use. And really through just Herculean efforts by law enforcement. They're taking these investigations and they're going up the chain of distribution, and that's what the common denominator is they go to the first person that supplied them, find out what they can, then from that step they go to level 2, then they go to level 3, and they're trying to take this as far up the chain as we can. Being a federal prosecutor is by far the best job in the world, because my job is to do what's right all the time. And in these cases, and Carrie and I have talked a lot, it's trying to bring a sense of justice. There is a child out there who has died from fentanyl. There's a family out there that has lost a loved one because of fentanyl. And there's a dealer out there who is peddling death for a profit. And when that child passes away and that family loses a loved one, it's a sense of trying to bring justice both to the victim as well as the victim's family. That's, I think, the motivator on a lot of this, is that bringing a sense of justice to the victim and the victim's family. and holding these merchants of death accountable for what they've done.
You know, one of the things the former U.S. Attorney Scott Ospog said to me, your former boss, he said, we can't prosecute our way out of these cases. We can't do that. So Kim, I mean, do you want to speak to that? Why can't we just prosecute our way out? Why is that not enough?
There's not enough people. There's not enough people at any level. There's not enough people with all the people involved. There's not enough resources. Every day, everyone that works in this community, law enforcement community, gets up to make a difference. They work together. They do the best they can. There's just not enough people for the flood of fentanyl that's coming in and being consumed in Oregon and Idaho.
You take issue with the term overdose death. Can you explain why and what you think might be better?
Yeah, well, addiction is completely stigmatized in our country, and you know, that's due to all sorts of reasons. And it's not that those who are addicts don't deserve our empathy and support. I mean, there's something behind that led them there. But I think the reason it's so important for me about Griffin, that this be understood as a poisoning rather than an overdose, is so that people understand that you can't distance yourself from this situation if your kid is not an addict. You know, not that, again, you know, all the empathy for people struggling with addiction, but what happened to my son was he tried one pill that he thought was something entirely different, and it was poison, and it killed him. I mean, he was murdered. And so I feel like that's the important thing. The danger, I mean, Scott and I have talked about this, that it's illegal, overdose is the legal term for the pill itself. But my son didn't overdose, you know, he took one pill for the first time in his life, and the last, obviously. But, it was the pill that killed him. I mean, it was the pill that had the overdose.
I mean, you talk about this bait and switch idea too, that, you know, had he known, had you known, but Anna, what are your thoughts here?
I agree with that. I mean, I think that it's a disservice to refer to it as overdose. I think these are poisonings. These are unintentional poisonings. But I would even go so far as to say even someone who has a substance use disorder and is using a substance habitually, right, most people who are using substances don't have a way of like knowing exactly what they're getting, and I think often those are also poisonings.
Yeah, there was apparently the night before my son died, there was a teen girl in our community who also died, and she was struggling with some addiction around opiates, and she had been getting better, but obviously, you know, she was struggling a bit.
Same high school too.
Same high school.
Yeah.
But in my mind, she was killed. I'm sure in her parents' mind, she was killed. That wasn't her plan, to take poison.
You know, Carrie, one of the things you and I have talked about too is nothing can bring Griffin back. But, you know, we've got, you know, I know you want justice. I mean, now you've filed a lawsuit too against the alleged drug trafficker who's charged with your son's death. What else though? I mean, what might help at this point? I
mean, for me,
yeah,
nothing can help. I think time and, but I don't think anything's ever going to help.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're really glad you're here with us today. Let me just say that.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, and I did check with you earlier to make sure that you were okay answering this question, because I'm very mindful of, you know, kind of triggering and kind of having open dialogue here. If Griffin were here with us today, what do you think he would say?
He would say, how much longer is this going on? Can I please go home? That's what he would say.
Or go practice tennis, right?
Right, exactly, or hang out with his friends. What I know for sure about my son is that he was very, very caring about other people. He cared about social justice. He stood up for his friends all the time. He was, some of his friends lost the person who they turned to with their own sort of like mental health struggles. So and this is another part of why I do this, why I keep talking about it, is because he would want that. He would do that too.
Just want to get a final thought from each of you here. I mean, we're just scratching the surface with the conversation, let's be honest about that, but this is an entry point for families and parents who may not know how to have this conversation or may be curious or want to know more. But Cam, I mean, you could take this any way you want. A final thought. What gives you optimism? What gives you hope? What is the important message that you want to get across for families who are watching this?
Got to talk to your kids. I think that's a starting point. We've got to continue to break down the barriers between education, treatment, prevention, and law enforcement. It's been said here and it's been said before. We're not going to solve this with a law enforcement only approach. It's going to take collaboration. It's going to be able to talk across public health and law enforcement and across spectrums that we've never had to deal with before, to share experience and ideas and have a more holistic approach. And again, talk to your kids. I'm a big proponent of Narcan. Narcan and its deployment is one opportunity more for treatment when done correctly. I'm a huge fan of Narcan. I think it's really important.
Scott, final thought?
Talk to your kids. I'm going to echo what everyone's already said out right now, and that hopefully parents who are sitting around with their kids while the show airs, hopefully they turn to them during the show and talk to them, and hopefully when the show is over, they turn to their kids and they have real heart-to-heart conversations with them. Because in this crisis that we're in, law enforcement is essential, prosecution is essential, drug treatment is essential, but what is equally, if not more essential, is families talking to their kids, going through this, and when there's a need for treatment or a need for help, making those referrals, but talking to their kids and always just repeatedly talking to them about the dangers and what the options are out there for them.
I'm just hearing this common theme of a continuing conversation around this. This is just the beginning here. Dr. Anna Hildy, final thought here.
I think I'm echoing, just echoing on that. Parents, have these conversations, continue to have the conversations. I think young people, right? I also would say, like, if you are hearing this, talk to your friends. I mean, educate one another. I think if you are struggling, if there's a parent that's struggling, a young person, know that there's help. There is help. There are resources. And I would just also send this out to our legislature that pay attention. We need to create some change in our state.
And what I'm gathering from that is there may be some attention, but not nearly enough. Carrie, final thought.
I mean, largely, my final thought is the same as everyone else's, which is that you have to talk to, we have to have endless discussions about this. We need the education, we need open discussion. I'm very grateful for you, David, for keeping this conversation alive, and also how you allow it to sort of pivot around my son. And beyond that, my main hope is just that my son's, no matter what, my son's death was pointless. So, but he would want also for, if he had to go, that people learn from it.
And I'm sure that's what you want as well right now. All right. Carrie, Anna, Scott, Cam, thanks for being part of this really important conversation. Appreciate it. And we know many of you watching might have more questions, possibly be looking for ways to help your family or someone you love. If you are not watching there already, head to kgw.com for the full version of this discussion, plus links to resources that can help. And if it's not too much trouble, please share this conversation as widely as possible. Help us get the word out about fentanyl and save as many lives as we can. I'm David Molko. Thank you for watching.